he was critical of the U.S. Invasion of Afghanistan after 9/11, but he was very much within kind of mainstream of Islam, mainstream of politics. That changed, and it's sort of a long story, but that's one of the things, sort of the core reason I wrote this book was to understand that. And I'll just say that what struck me is that there is a personal element, a very personal element in this case. There's an ideological element, and there's sort of an external element. So the personal element in this case was that he was on this, he was on a roll. I mean, he was the right guy, and I think he was quite happy, would have been quite happy to stay in this country, to become a public figure, even better known than he was at the time he was doing this. And I can easily imagine he would have been very successful at that, and perhaps we would all have been tired of seeing him appear on Meet the Press on Sunday. And it would have been a very useful role because there was never really, there has in the 14 years, never really been a truly national voice representing Muslims in this country. And I think he could have played a very useful role. But on the personal front, what happened was he discovered that the FBI, which had been following him around, had discovered that he regularly visited prostitutes in hotels around the DC area. And they had a file on this. And when he learned this, the manager of an escort service called him to say, the FBI just paid me a visit, and they know all about this. He panicked. He was essentially a conservative preacher to a conservative congregation. It was no different from a Southern Baptist preacher with a conservative take on things and some off-the-record hobbies. He panicked. He thought this was the end of his career, and he, a few days after learning that, he flew off to the UK and returned only for one short visit. So that was the personal side. The ideological side, I think he began to, he was always aware of the sort of jihadist school, if you'd say, this sort of radical strain of Islam, but he had rejected it. He became gradually more interested in it, and that was really in part because of things were happening in the outside world. We had invaded Afghanistan. He was mildly critical of that in this clip we saw. We'd gone on to invade Iraq. He was extremely critical of that. And it began to make him think about what Osama bin Laden had been claiming for years, which was that the US was at war with Islam. And that began to have its appeal